Good morning. Welcome to One Ancestor at a Time, YouTube Live for Friday the 13th of February 2026. So I hope you are steering clear of any ladders, broken mirrors, or black cats today. Anyway, I'm feeling lucky. And it is a great time today to remember the people in our family tree who didn't necessarily have descendants, but they were very much a special part of your family tree. And I think every family has these people. Sometimes because they don't have their own kids, they are more influential in a way that parents can't be because they don't have that spare time or spare attention. Today I'd love to share with you the story of my auntie Noni. Now, I'm not sure where the name Noni came from because her actual name is Dorothy Olive Lind Young. And she was born in 1907 and passed away in either 1994 or 1995. I'm still in that exact part of the genealogy where I'm sorting through documents to find out, what's the exact amount, or what's the exact date of her passing. And that is part of genealogy is exactitude and getting the correct details and checking with the primary records, which is easier to do now than it ever was before. But today I don't need to tell you so much about the dates and the times, but about who this woman was to me, to my sister, to my cousins, and to the Young family on both sides of the world. Because if you've been following along, as you know, the Young family originally came from England, well, originally from Scotland, but we don't have much detail about that. But then went to India, and then Australia, then back to England, and our great grandfather was Commander Charles Young, who we've done a whole episode on here on the channel about his near-death experience in the HMS Irresistible. So the family came to New Zealand, starting with my grandfather, who was the oldest boy, and then the rest of them followed in due course, and you'll hear a little bit more about that. But then in the 1930s, almost all of them went back except for my grandfather. And so we had two camps of Youngs, and as normally happens, we sort of lost touch and didn't have much in common with each other, didn't quite, as the generations went on, didn't quite know who each other were. And so thanks to the magic of social media, we've been able to be reconnected with the family back home, literally in the same house, built by my great-grandfather in 1938. And there were two people who connected both sides of the world because they were independent travelers. One is my Uncle James, who is a whole other story. Uncle James, my great Uncle James, I thought he was a fictional character before actually meeting him. Really, when somebody says, oh, he's such a character, definitely him, very eccentric. And then there was Auntie Noni. And so Auntie Noni was, for us kids, she was such a wonderful, loving presence. Not only loving and caring, but I think we got that from all of our from grandparents on both sides, but also she made things interesting. She was a storyteller. And so it just so happens, let me show you what she looked like. So this is my grandfather on the left, Lamont, and Noni on the right. I'm not sure how old they are. I'm not really good at assessing ages of youngsters. Perhaps they're 7 or 8 here. They're only a year apart. So that's Noni. And let me just share her in more recent times. That's her when she was a grown-up, and that is probably what she looked like during most of the story that you're about to hear. My uncle went over to visit the family in the UK, and bless him, he took some photos. And one of the photos that he took and sent to me was this handwritten life story, Miss The Young. And I have transcribed it, and I've said in my notes, author unknown, but you know what? I really think that Noni wrote this herself. I'm not sure why it's written in the third person, but, well, that's okay. So here's the story that she's possibly written about herself. Miss Young was born in 1907, daughter of a naval officer. His ship Irresistible went down in the 1914-18 war, and Miss Young has a fellow feeling for those who have to endure a time when they do not know when their loved ones are missing or dead. Now, this simple sentence really helped me to fill in a gap of knowledge, because at first I knew the date on which the Irresistible went down. I've got the piece of the bookshelf that my great-grandfather rescued that's been stamped with that date. So that's set in concrete. That's, in February 1915. But then I wasn't quite sure what happened afterwards. And I know that I found his service record. So I found that in May that year, he was assigned to a ship again. But this is very sad that the family back in the UK didn't know whether he lived or died. So they had a time when they didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Fortunately, she carries on, her father was eventually picked up, but the ill health following his experience meant he was no longer fit for naval service. This affected the family fortunes. Again, a small sentence that's doing a lot of work. Now, I have heard, and I didn't capture them in writing, and it was a long time ago, perhaps 30 years ago, that I heard the stories of the extreme poverty that the family went through after the war, and with Commander Young out of action. But the spans quite a few years. But eventually, Miss Young was able to train as a children's nurse. She was told that a few months in a hospital would add another bit to her certificate, and went to Great Ormond Street. Now, not being in the UK, I don't know much about this, but it's a hospital that's still around. And it has a charity that's called Great Ormond Street Hospital. So that's really good. Good to know. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. Great Ormond Street, she found this a distressing time. To one who likes to see small children lively and happy, it was hard to come to terms with the idea and reality of babies crying in pain and sometimes dying. So she was a very compassionate lady, Auntie Noni. Then came the time to apply for jobs. As she had a brother in New Zealand, that's my grandfather, Miss Young applied to the Victoria League for the Settlement of Trained Females. Cool name. And was sent out to be nursed to a delicate child. She went steerage, which means the cheapest cabins on the ship, usually at the back. The smallest, usually your sharing facilities, with public school lads going out for farm training. Now, that's possibly the next round of people going to Flock House, which I actually need to do a whole episode on that. But Flock House was the agricultural training school set up by the sheep owners of New Zealand as a thank you to the Royal Navy and the Merchant Navy, because those people had saved their business. They'd enabled the shipments of wool to get through to its markets in the UK. And and that's how my grandfather, that's how his two brothers ended up coming out to New Zealand. So yes, public school lads going out for farm training, and lads rescued from prison by the Salvation Army and also going to farm. So a big, massive influx of English people coming to Aotearoa to farm, to work the land, or to learn how to do so anyway. Upon arrival in New Zealand, she received a message to say the delicate child was dead and her services no longer required. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? 6 weeks at sea, or go to a job that then is no longer there when you arrive. With very little money, she obviously had to find work quickly, and so went to a registry office. Here she was offered a job as a general on a farm where there was a sick wife. She did not know what a general meant, but was soon to find out. First came the journey through a bushfire. The men hopped out occasionally to beat the flames when they got too near the bus. When Miss Young arrived at Greytown, the farmer's wife, who was dying of tuberculosis, said she could start by getting the meal for men. A vast crowd of half-caste, I'm sorry to use that phrase, it's not a very nice phrase. Half-caste and full-blooded Māoris, who rather alarmed her. Interesting. When wash day came, she had to make her own soap. There were several tubs with washing soaking in them, including men's very dirty dungarees. It was a pig farm. Miss Young found the boiling copper very greasy because they cured the bacon in it. Eek. She collected the grease to make the soap. This job ended when an appalled mother visiting New Zealand came to see her daughter and swept her off at once. Eventually, friends of her parents, still in New Zealand, mentioned an advertisement for a nursery governess, and Miss Young set off for an interview in a large house in beautiful grounds. There were 3 small girls from Miss Young to teach, the other 2 being in boarding school. She was offered and accepted the job, and then found that she was to teach the daughters of the Prime Minister of New Zealand, J.E. Coates. And she still occasionally sees her little girls. Wow, that's quite a CV. In dire contrast was a job she had later on as a nursery governess to the children of a violent and bad-tempered butcher who threw his books at the housekeeper in mistake for his wife and dragged the cradle of a very small new baby into the cold corridor at night because the child was crying. Then, for family reasons, Miss Young returned to England, helping a fellow passenger to care for her children. She was not paid, but treated to marvellous times sailing at different ports. This lady's brother needed a governess in Austria. Then the Foreign Office transferred him to Czechoslovakia, where Miss Young found herself living in the legation on the first floor of a palace. Just as a side note to this, when I transcribed this and sent it around to the rest of my dad's brothers, my uncles, my Uncle David came back with this. He goes, when we got back from tripping around Europe at the end of 1974, we showed Auntie Noni some slides, including some from Prague. She jabbed her finger at an upstairs window of one of the buildings in the picture and told us she lived there for some time in the early 1930s as nanny for the children of the British ambassador. One day, Prague received a visit from Adolf Hitler, and because of the sensitivity of the situation, Noni was confined to her room. From there, she observed Hitler's open-topped car cruising slowly along the street below her, with Hitler performing his salute as he passed the crowds of onlookers. And you know, said Noni, his car passed right below the window where I was watching from. If I had had a brick, I could have dropped it on the head of this nasty little man and perhaps changed the history of the world. So that's just an aside. Thank you, Uncle David. That's a fantastic story. So anyway, it was while she was in Czechoslovakia, just trying to find there we go. It was in Czechoslovakia that Miss Young came across their beautifully made puppets, which she used to help teach. But she was not allowed to bring any with her when, because of the pre-war crisis, she returned to England. So late 1930s now. But she was inspired by the art of puppetry. For a time, back in England, she taught in the house of a gentleman connected with Jaguar cars, then found herself as matron of a school where, as the masters joined up one by one, she eventually did some teaching as well. In the old wartime boarding school stories, sometimes a master turned out to be a spy. It really happened to Miss Young. The master replied in German when taken off guard, was seen rather obviously and ineptly collecting information at a nearby airfield, and was finally let off by the police. Well, after the war, Miss Young trained as a teacher at Portsmouth Training College. She found it hard going and was not helped by a landlady who insisted that all lights were out by 9 and windows never opened. Her first job was in Gosport at a new school opened on an old army camp. Her second at Church Street School, now Charles Dickens School, I believe. At some point, Miss Young had become a friend of Coco the Clown, who came to her schools to see the children she taught and received letters from them. She herself continued her interest in puppets and theatres, which she made herself, and toured schools with him, taking her children to the pantomime on the proceeds. And this is Auntie Noni that I remember. Puppets, stories. She was a world creator in the same way that TV shows created worlds for me, but she had just a few small tools, but she really, it's like she studied how to capture the attention of kids and make them happy. So from 1960 to 67, Miss Young was at Wimborne School. Then her house left to tenants. She and a friend celebrated retirement by a 20-month round-the-world cruise beginning on a cargo boat. They had a ticket that allowed them to get on and off any boat, but they had to go on, not back. So it was truly around the world. Miss Young now lives, and I'm not sure when this was written, now lives at Sutcliffe Covert House. Couldn't really understand the writing there. She is an 8 o'clocker generally, also not sure what that means, and often seen at various church functions. Her interest in travel and toys is as strong as ever. She goes away several times a year and can always be seen at the toy stall at church fairs. She buys damaged new toys and renovates them, and meticulously does the same with second-hand toys. Stuffing is removed, the furry skin washed, and new or clean stuffing put back. Her flat is full of toys in their various stages. What a wonderful story. And to sort of cap it off, we also have a great newspaper story. Let me see if I can. Sorry, one more thing. I think you might have seen this photo before if you've been watching along. This is the family in New Zealand in the 1930s, down in Silverstream in the Wellington area. So at one stage, all of the Youngs had come to New Zealand, but by the time that World War II was impending, it was time for most of them to go back. Now, yes, this newspaper story. Dorothy packs for a family mission. Now, my picture is covering this picture. I don't think I can move that. So let me just read it out to you. Goodness me, where is it? There it is. Okay. Dorothy packs for family mission. An Eastney pensioner leaves this weekend on a special round-the-world mission at the tender age of 81. In her aunt's will, and her aunt was Aunt Elsie, also, as far as I can tell, a single spinster who was a painter. And I have one letter from her to my father. So yes, anyway, in her aunt's will, Miss Dorothy Noni Young was given the task of passing on a 100-year-old portrait to relatives in New Zealand. Miss Young said the painting of her grandfather as a boy is vitally important to the family. Mr. Lamont Young was murdered in mysterious circumstances near a gold prospecting site in Australia. Miss Young said a book about the incident is being published this year. If that's the case, the book is called Five Men Vanished. It's by Cyril Pearl, and it's I'm not sure if it's still in print. I have 2 copies. Mr. Young was an early settler in Australasia, and the Youngs have valued the portrait as one of the few mementos left by him. Miss Young's 2-month journey, which she expects to be her last, will also take in Sydney and Melbourne in Australia, Hong Kong, and Singapore, where she will visit friends and relatives. Miss Young is no stranger to foreign parts. She's worked and travelled in Europe, Asia, and Australasia as a nurse, nanny, teacher, and even a general on a pig farm. She also designed and toured with puppet theatres in Australia. By charging for her shows, she helped raise money for bushfire victims. This time she will travel by bus and plane, but on other trips, Miss Young has gone all over the world by liner. She said, "It's much more fun in a boat." And she added, "I love my travel. It's always been my vice. I used to go all over Europe with £5 in my pocket. Whenever I read about somewhere, I want to see it." Asked about her future, mind you, at age 81, Miss Young said, "I'll write a book someday. Life's been marvelous." So she didn't write a book, but she did write those pages which I shared with you today. And so in the spirit of those who are often missed out on family trees, sometimes we look at our family tree and we're just after the direct line of descent. We can open up such a wide and wonderful world sometimes when we just go sideways on the tree, sideways to siblings, sideways to aunts, even sideways to step parents. It's another episode for another day. But yes, I just want to raise a virtual glass, raise perhaps a plastic bottle, to Auntie Noni. Thank you for being the inspiration for all of us young descendants in New Zealand and in UK and around the world, and all the other good that you did. Your life is over, but it does live on, and your memory is treasured, as is Uncle James, or Uncle Jimmy, as some knew him, known for his eccentricity and his multimedia-ness. He had a film camera and tape recorder long before we all had those things incorporated into our phone. So perhaps he was ahead of his time. At the time, it was very strange behavior for him to be taking photos, movies, recordings all the time. But hey, he was just about 50 or 60 years ahead of his time. So yeah, these wonderful single aunts and uncles, they're such an important part of our family. And I hope this has inspired you. If you're doing your family history research, go sideways. Don't just go up. Because sometimes, I understand, sometimes family tree stuff can be overwhelming. Sometimes we want the whole story, but when we get the whole story, well, like I said, another one of these lives, we read years of a life in a few minutes, but they happened as our life happens, 1 second at a time. And so it is a lot. And it is a good exercise sometimes just to focus on one ancestor at a time, which is why this whole channel got its name. So thank you very much for sharing Noni's story with me today, and looking forward to catching up with you next time on One Ancestor at a Time. Thanks very much.